You stopped praying, not because you forgot, not because you got busy. You stopped because you prayed, and nothing happened. And at some point, silence felt worse than not trying at all. That's where this video starts. Not from a place of just believe harder, not from a list of tips to fix your prayer life, from the honest truth that a lot of people who love God, or used to love God, reached a point where praying felt pointless, and they quietly walked away from it. If that's you, stay with me, because what I'm about to say might change how you see this whole thing. The problem nobody talks about. Here's the thing, nobody in church is saying out loud. Most people don't quit praying because they're lazy. They quit because they're exhausted. They prayed for that relationship to be healed. It fell apart anyway. They prayed for that job. They didn't get it. They prayed for that sick person to get better. That person didn't make it. And every time you go back to prayer after one of those moments, it gets harder. Because now prayer isn't just a spiritual practice. It's a reminder of the times you felt unheard. That's not weakness. That's what happens when you actually take prayer seriously enough to be hurt by it. People who never really believed in prayer in the first place don't feel that pain. You felt it because you actually showed up, but here's where I think most people go wrong. They assume that because prayer didn't work the way they expected it to, prayer doesn't work at all. And those are two very different things. What we think prayer is supposed to do, most of us were raised with a picture of prayer that looks something like this. You ask, God answers. The thing you asked for happens. It's basically a spiritual vending machine. You put in the right request, in the right way, with enough faith, and the right result comes out. And I'm not blaming anyone for believing that. A lot of what gets preached and taught, especially early on, feeds into that model. The stories we hear are the miracle stories, the healing that happened, the provision that came through, the prayer that got answered in a dramatic way. We don't hear as many stories about the years of silence, about the prayers that seemed to go nowhere, about the faithful people who prayed their whole lives and still lost things they begged God to save. So when that happens to you, when the answer doesn't come, you think something is wrong with you. Your faith is too small. Your life isn't clean enough. You're not praying the right way. You didn't pray enough times, and so you try harder. And when that still doesn't work, you eventually get to a point where you just stop. Because what's the point of showing up if no one seems to be there? This is where I want to slow down and say something clearly. That model of prayer, prayer as a transaction, prayer as a request system, that might not be the whole picture. In fact, I'd argue it's the thing that sets most people up to eventually give up. What prayer actually is, think about the closest relationship in your life. A parent, a best friend, a partner, someone you genuinely trust. Now imagine that every single conversation you had with them was just you asking for something. Can you do this? Can you fix this? Can you make this happen? I need this. I need that. What kind of relationship would that be? And what would happen the first time they said no, or didn't answer, or gave you something completely different from what you asked for? Would you feel like the relationship had failed? Would you stop talking to them altogether? That sounds extreme when we put it in human terms, but that's basically how a lot of us have approached God. Prayer isn't just a request line. It's a relationship. And like any real relationship, it has moments that don't make sense, silences that feel unbearable, answers you didn't want, outcomes you didn't choose. And in those moments, the temptation is to walk away. But walking away from prayer doesn't actually make the silence go away. It just means you go through it alone. I want you to think about someone in the Bible who understood this better than almost anyone else. The Psalms are full of prayers that sound nothing like the polished, confident prayers we hear in church. David, a man described as someone after God's own heart, wrote things like, "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" That's in the Bible. That's prayer. That's what it looks like to stay in the conversation even when you have no idea what's happening. The moment you almost quit, and what it actually means. If you've reached the point where you've stopped praying, or where prayer feels empty, I want to tell you something that might sound strange. That moment might be the most spiritually significant thing that's ever happened to you. Not because suffering is good, not because God engineered your disappointment, but because the version of faith that breaks under pressure was never the real thing. It was a training wheel version, a beginner's faith, and it served a purpose. But real faith, the kind that can hold the weight of real life, gets built in the exact place you're standing right now. There's a story in the Gospels about a man who came to Jesus with a request. His son was sick. He'd tried everything, and he said to Jesus, and I love this because it's so honest. He said, "I believe. Help my unbelief." He wasn't pretending. He wasn't performing. He was saying, I have something, but I also have doubt, and I'm bringing both of them to you because I have nowhere else to go. That prayer, messy, uncertain, desperate, got answered. If you've given up on prayer, I would argue you haven't walked away from God. You've walked into a harder, more honest version of the conversation. And if you're willing to show back up and say, I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't even know if this works, but here I am. That might be the most real prayer you've ever prayed. How to start again when you don't know how, here's the practical part. Because I know it's not enough to just feel moved by an idea. If you've been away from prayer for a while, weeks, months, maybe years, coming back can feel incredibly awkward, like reconnecting with someone after a long silence and not knowing what to say first. So let me give you a few things that have helped people actually get back into it. First, don't start where you left off. The last version of your prayer, life felt like a performance. Lots of words, lots of structure, lots of pressure to say the right thing. Don't go back to that. Start smaller. Start simpler. You can literally just say, I don't know how to pray right now. I'm trying. That's enough. God doesn't grade you on vocabulary. Second, stop waiting until you feel like it. One of the biggest lies about prayer, and about spiritual life in general, is that you should feel it before you do it. You wait until you feel connected. You wait until your faith feels stronger. You wait until you're in a better place emotionally. But that's not how it works. You show up first. The feeling, if it comes after. Just like going to the gym doesn't feel good before you go, but often feels completely different once you're there. Prayer works the same way. You don't wait to want it. You choose it. And then you see what happens. Third, let the silence be part of it. Not every prayer needs a response you can see or hear. Some of the most powerful moments in prayer are not the moments of clarity or breakthrough. They're the moments of simply being still and acknowledging that something bigger than you exists, even when you can't feel it. If you sit down to pray and nothing dramatic happens, that doesn't mean nothing happened. You showed up. You kept the line open. That matters more than you think. Fourth, be honest about what you're angry about. If you feel like God let you down, say it. If you're frustrated, say it. If you feel abandoned, confused, ignored, bring that into the prayer. Don't dress it up. Don't soften it to make it sound more acceptable. Some of the most powerful prayers in human history are angry prayers, grieving prayers, prayers that say, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't like it. And I need you to show up because I'm running out of reasons to believe you will. That's not lack of faith. That's radical honesty. And radical honesty is always closer to real prayer than a well-rehearsed speech where you pretend to feel things you don't. The real reason to come back, I want to end with something that might not be what you expect. The reason to come back to prayer isn't because it will fix everything. It's not because your situation will change the moment you start again. It might, but I can't promise you that. The reason to come back is because the alternative, going through everything you're going through completely on your own, with no connection to something beyond yourself, is harder. Not in a dramatic way, just in a slow, grinding, relentless way that chips away at you over time. People who give up on prayer don't usually become happier. They become quieter, smaller, more certain that nothing can change. And that's not peace, that's resignation. Prayer, real prayer, not the performance version, not the vending machine version, is about staying connected to something that is bigger than your worst day. It's about refusing to let the silence have the final word. The door isn't locked. It was never locked. You can walk back through it today with nothing to offer except your honesty, your confusion, and maybe just the smallest part of you that still wonders if, maybe, just maybe, someone is on the other side. Start there. That's enough. If this video spoke to something you've been carrying, hit subscribe. There's a lot more like this coming.